opposite. This air got my lungs stretching different. The leaves gon' leave, so why?
Why'd you title the new album Deception Falls?
Well, we titled the album Deception Falls mostly because we recorded the album at a cabin, at a lodge in the middle of the woods in the Pacific Northwest, next to a waterfall that's called Deception Falls. And also, it just so happened that when we recorded this album, when we arrived there, the first songs we kind of wrote were kind of dissecting where our lives were at that point in time and how we perceived everything. And then 2 weeks of taking a break from everything, our mindsets sort of changed. So I guess in the sense it's also us saying that deception is something, self-deception is something that goes away in time. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I also just thought it sounded cool.
And it sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds cool. So you guys were together recording this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's four of
we
us.
all flew out.
That's crazy.
We planned on doing this for a while, and obviously when the pandemic happened, we had to push everything back. But once we were able to organize the trip, we rented out a big cabin in the woods, set up a little studio in one of the rooms, the one that Era was sleeping in, and we picked that. We listened to the beats for the first time there. We had 200 beats that we were sitting on that we never heard before, and we were going through them. And yeah, we just happened to make the album while we were out there.
Yeah, it was like a super organic process, and it's like I feel like it's harder to do that over the internet. Like, I mean, it's fine to do that, but it's like it seems so much more calculated over the internet. Of like you have to send files back and forth. With everything with this was like very vibe oriented. Like it would just be like we put a beat on. Hey, everybody, you like this one? And we had beats that like we, producer friends of ours had sent us. And we just had a big folder, just put it on shuffle. And it was just like the most fun and painless process ever, just making this. It was a lot of fun.
Shout out to the boys in blue.
He's in blue.
Yeah, they go.
It's a reference.
It's a reference to something on the album that I said. I said shout out to the boys in blue, but it's a double entendre because it was to the cops and to the Crips.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys have been working together for almost 10 years. Why was now the right time to do an album?
I think we've been doing the solo shit for a long time, and that's kind of our main thing. We're all individual artists. I don't know. Personally, for me, I'm not sure why now. Maybe it's just because now it makes more sense than ever before. We're better positioned to do things on a slightly larger scale than we were able to before. And I think it's the combination of all of us individually growing as solo artists and cultivating the audience that we have, and that led to basically us eventually getting together and recording this album. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was something that was just like brewing for a while because we've all kind of like danced around each other's energies for a while. It's like the internet is a vast but also small place, and it's very easy to be a big fish in a small pond on the internet. But around the time where people were, heavily on like blogs, SoundCloud, all that, it was like, we ended up linking in different places, and then like now I feel like it's just perfect simply because like there's a scape of understanding for our I don't want to say content, but more so what we have to say. I feel like leading up until now, even like preceding the passing of Juice WRLD, people weren't really aware or willing to allow themselves to be open to the idea of mental illness even being involved in hip hop. So it evolving to the point where now you know, even it's crazy conceptually, even Juice World being a Black artist, and then him, the main thing being mental illness, depression, things of the sort. It opened up the world, you know, even though there were already artists like us over there, but it opened up the world for people to be like, all right, I think I'm gonna lend a little listening ear to that. So the timing of this now, especially being like, I'm not gonna say post-pandemic because it's not, but being in a position where things are slightly opening, people that are having cabin fever are coming out, ironically, because of Deception Falls, that's being inside of a cabin and dealing with it. And then coming to now to do the tour, it seems like opportune timing. On top of the fact that our lives just kind of came together well enough for us to be able to, you know, support ourselves to be in the position that we're in.
Yeah,
It seems right. You know,
I want to go back to something you just said, because speaking about mental illness in hip hop, immediately Scarface popped in my mind.
mm-hmm.
Even
DMX.
DMX, on some level, Pac and Big, it didn't. People don't remember it as mental illness, but it, you know, there was a lot of depression and I don't know what the word is, paranoia.
Like, yeah, Scarface especially had a lot of paranoia bars.
A lot of paranoia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it important for you guys to speak about your mental health struggles in your music?
Because it didn't stop with our family's generation. It didn't stop with my parents. My parents just didn't know what to call it. Like we just said, we call it paranoia because that's what seems like it makes the most sense. That's the only word that you can use to identify it as anything. But as time went on, it's like, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine and she was talking about her mother and she was saying how her mother identified with her depression, but didn't know what to call it. So until they actually spoke about it and were able to see like, oh, we're talking about the same thing. They just have two different names. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think not. It's just it doesn't get discussed enough, and I think vulnerability is something that ought to be promoted as a strength, because vulnerability just means, you know, the willingness to sort of look inside and confront things. And so for us, I think that's why it's important. At least for me, I'd say that's why it's important.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I always feel like the most impactful stuff that I ever do is always like looking inside rather than outside. Like my whole thing is like, and I can speak, this is for everybody in here. This is therapy for us, you know, making music, writing, the whole process. And it's like looking at a diary entry of one of our, like, that's what it feels like every time we make music. It's very, very, for the most part, very personal. And even though we're all solo artists and we've worked together on this and we all have different styles and stuff like that, that seems to be our universal thing, is this like deeply personal experience. And it's kind of like, I didn't even really like set out to write about mental health. It was just what I was dealing with at the time. You know what I mean? And I think that that's with all of us here. This isn't like just some kind of aesthetic or something. This is like a real thing that matters to us, and it's not just in a kind of like who can relate kind of situation. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel better when I write about the sad stuff I think about, you know, and this, you know, and if someone can pull something from that, that's awesome. Like that's kind of,
and I like that it's also not solution oriented, because I think when you start approaching it from a solution oriented perspective, then it comes across as preachy and condescending. And the reality is we don't know better, right? Because so when you're looking inside yourself, all you can speak on is about yourself. How others choose to apply it is up to them. But yeah, I would like to hope that people are able to distinguish us from some rappers that, no disrespect, but in my opinion, like approach depression in a very surface or like corny kind of level.
Relate.
And so, yeah, so I feel like, yeah. Anyway, there's nothing else I can add that these guys haven't really said.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off of what you were saying, Rav. The and what Bill was saying too about it being so authentic and not being like an aesthetic thing. It's like for me personally, and I know all of us have gotten this, you know, that, you know, oh, why don't you write happy songs? And it's like, well, I do, I actually write about everything I feel. I don't just write when I'm sad. I don't just write when I'm excited. Like, you know, I have all different types of songs, but you know, there's an algorithm even in the way that we perceive things, and we gravitate towards whatever we relate to, and then we try to find things along that scale. So if I put out 2 albums that are sad, people are going to listen to it, and that's where it's going to slide me, and it works. This is how I feel. If I'm feeling sad 23 hours out of 24 hours in a day, that's what I'm going to write about. If I happen to write a song on the 24th hour when I'm feeling okay, then that's what it's going to sound like. You know, it creates a dynamic of being a human, you know, versus it's just like, I'm just this or I'm just that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and hip hop specifically too. I feel like,
and also not portraying yourself as the person that you want to be, but pretending that you are that person. You know, like, oh, I am flawless, or I am above certain kinds of people and everything. That's the other part of it.
Yeah, it's for sure.
It's being grounded.
And you know, it's crazy talking about the way that it's presented too. Like I listen to everything. I've always listened to everything, you know, and it's interesting thinking about the way like I'll listen to Young Thug, and you know, the way that he'll approach a song about depression versus OJ on Song Cry, or you know, Biggie, I you know, or Lil Wayne, I Feel Like Dying. Like you can go and like even coming to what we're doing now, it's like there's a lane of expression in hip hop for this thing that I feel like artists is just kind of like touched on. It's like, oh, I'm feeling this today, or even little like I'll go on real like for a quick minute to talk about an artist that like I really connect to, that it's a story that's sad to watch because I relate because of all the traumas and shit that I've been through. But watching Lil Wayne, you know, Lil Wayne is on the top, and Lil Wayne is this, greatest is this, Miss Officer, this is sick. But when you listen to I Feel Like Dying, I feel like that's actually what he feels like. Like when you're watching, like, oh, Lil Wayne been in the hospital again, Lil Wayne been in here. It's like he wants to talk about it clearly, but maybe there's a reason why he can't. And I feel like we're in a position independently to be able to just kind of like talk about it without having anyone be like, yo, you can't do that. I feel like the risk reward factor here isn't as apparent.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like if we were really, really popular and we were this embarrassingly open and vulnerable, I think it could compromise certain deals and things like that, almost as an insurance. You know, if your insurance people find out you have clinical depression, your insurance goes through the roof, right? Literally, people are like that. People are like that in general, though. As soon as they see that, like, oh, he's not just like an aesthetic depressed, you know, oh, he could be this or that. I feel like people are very hands off. And the other thing is I wanted to mention is that this industry, what's great is that we're not coming from the industry. We're, you know, what we're doing is like a grassroots movement. And so we're not being indoctrinated by an industry that's going to just bleed us dry, milk us until they can get everything they want out of us and then dispose of us. Because there's so many artists that currently there's so many like kids who are clearly down following, you know, self-destructive paths. And the saddest thing is they have a ton of adults around them who are encouraging it because that's what's feeding everybody, right? I think we're very fortunate that we have been independent and that we haven't had to be privy to that kind of pressure in the first place, that, you know, we're only answering to ourselves. And so I think that also makes the process of our expression and then interacting with our fans just healthier than it would be if there was also the involvement of the industry. But that's just my jaded, cynical view. I don't know.
You know, I don't even think that it's jaded and cynical. I think that's really realistic because even when we grew up, like listening to hip hop and different things, like not even just hip hop, like any genre of music, like what drew us in was, you know, it's like I use hip hop because that's what we talk about. LP, when we first saw that, it was like, oh shit, like we want to know what Vast Air is feeling. We want to know, why did you make Pigeon? Why did you make Fantastic Damage? Why did you? It's, you know, I feel like us being human leaves the room for people to ask questions. I feel like things get lost in translation where everything is just left up to mystery, which as much as people may have their own view of Kanye West, as a reason why Kanye West is talked about as often, is because he's very human. He leaves room for people to agree and to disagree, versus like you're getting a manufactured idea that's just following along with whatever they feel that the audience might like. You know, I feel like it could. I feel like with where we're at now too, I feel like it's a little bit easier. You know,
Yeah,
to just talk
because
about
everyone, I feel like everyone is guilty of, you know, or guilty or susceptible to outside pressures and influence, right? It's just if you can minimize, if you just minimize those interactions when it comes to your art, if you can minimize the amount of steps, the middlemen between you and your audience, then the healthier and the more pure the expression is.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know, it's nice not having someone who doesn't make music try to tell you how to make music, you know, like and like that feeds into all of that whole thing. And like we control our brand, we control everything, you know what I mean? And that freedom is, I mean, it's something that, like, I've always known, because it's like this is all we've ever really done. But like that freedom is really good, and the fact that we can talk about the topics that we want, or like the fact that I can make a record, and like if I want to have one song where I'm talking about how I was so depressed I didn't get out of bed for 2 days, and the next song could be about, you know, I don't know, just some like Southern like flexing type song, you know what I mean? The fact that I can do that, and like that's beautiful, you know what I mean? And I like that a lot. Like
yeah, and we definitely owe it. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say we definitely owe it to our audience that we've managed to cultivate, because we truly have like a very active community. You will see a lot of people, a lot of our peers, statistic peers, let's call them that, you know, in terms of like monthly listeners and things like that. And almost never do you find people interacting with the fans interacting with the artists as often these days, because a lot of people these days get plays from playlists. You know, it's just people being curated on playlists. So these numbers, they're not manufactured, but they just don't really translate into real life fans. Are you selling tickets? Are you selling merchandise? We sell shit out. We put out exclusive merch. We put out tickets. We managed to sell, and we managed to do that without the intervention of an industry, without that middleman. The only middleman we have is the third parties that we hire, you know, outsource for certain services here and there. But the creative control and the final product and the timing, everything is up to us. And if it weren't, I think we would probably be going off the deep end because of our mental health, you know, because I think then that's why I can totally relate to a lot of the artists that, you know, I think a lot of people clown on. They're like, oh, they're just druggies, or they're just this, or they're just that. But I feel for them, because they got the wrong people around them. No one's, you know, you go on these people's Instagrams, and it's like every other post will be a cry for help, and people be like, oh, twins, same, me too, haha, hearts, and then you find out, oh, artist overdose. It's very unfortunate, it's very sad.
And everyone around him, because they know, especially, it's just like that rock star lifestyle or whatever. It's very sexy from the outside looking in, like in a term of like it sells records, and you see people with teams that are just completely enabling people with terrible issues, and then everyone's like, oh, like, yeah, exactly, like Deep or other, you know, other people who overdosed in the same kind of way, or yeah. And it's crazy, because people all be like, man, I wonder what happened, or like, oh yeah, like you see people say like, oh yeah, he was like, oh yeah, he was a druggie or whatever. And I'm just like sitting here like, I mean, that could have been anybody. Like, I know so many people who, if they had the wrong influences around them, and they had that type of personality, got all those eyes on you, all this pressure on you, it's incredibly easy to fall into that. And I don't fuck with that. I don't fuck with people who like enable people. They don't care about them. You know what I mean? Like that's
they look at you like a product, right? Just as the you know, modeling industry looks at models as just like mannequins. You know, it's not. It's similar. I think it's maybe human nature in general, but I think it is important to. It is important, at least for us. We look at that and we sort of the takeaway way we have is, you know, surround yourself with the right people, and don't let people who don't give a shit about you get involved with shit that does matter to you. And it's not. It's. I don't even think necessarily the record labels are like, you know, it's not out of malice that they enable the worst in people. They're not sitting there like, oh, what's the worst thing we could do? It's just they're not even thinking what's a good or bad thing to do. All they're thinking is like, yo, how can I, you know, make
how can I make
money?
number go up?
Yeah, how can I make the numbers go up? It's a numbers game for them. So if there are people like that, don't get involved with them.
It's crazy, right? I think about DJ Kool Herc, and I think about just like just myself as being black and my identity with hip hop, right? And just how it's been used as a medium or a conduit to be able to get the story of the internals of whether it's community based in the street or drill music or even other types, and then to get it to the masses in a way that it can be understood. Hip hop was originally built and born for the sole purpose of creating a safe medium to convey how you felt. So the industry stepping in, being like, "Yo, we want to have a specific algorithm so that we can make money. We can just pop out artists and we can just pop out these whatever." Like, that's not what it was for. Even though it's being used as that now, you still have a lot of artists out here that are staying true to what they feel and are able to be able to make it to the next phase. You can use Kendrick as an example. You can use Isaiah Rashad as an example. You can use No Name as an example. You can use Doja Cat as an example, even though Doja Cat is, you know, poppy, but Doja Cat I would consider a rapper. You know, it's just so many elements. Like hip hop is so big too, and that's the craziest part. Like I play a lot of instruments, right? And coming from doing classical, doing jazz, doing metal, doing this, you start realizing, especially when you get to the production side of hip hop and sampling, you can take a gospel record and make a hip hop song. You can take a jazz record and make a hip hop song. You can take a folk record and make a hip hop song. You can take a mandolin and make a hip hop song. It leaves open space for creativity. We're just in a pocket and we're trying to make it bigger. So I think.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
I get to my favorite joint in the album is Viridian.
Well, thank you.
It's just so smooth. Take me into the creation of that song.
Well, when we first heard the beat, we were just going through the beats that our producer sent us. And when that one came on, it was like there was a few beats that we were sent that had kind of like this, just I would say almost like a Mad Lib like sound where it just felt warm and so soulful and kind of minimalistic in terms of the percussion. There's no real percussion, so to speak of. It's just I don't know.
Yeah.
That sold us immediately. We all heard it. We looked at each other like, okay, yeah,
like,
this one.
Yeah.
This
Or
one.
there were certain beats. There were certain beats where we would be like, okay, is this one, you know, such and such, and then we'd be like back and forth, like, oh no, maybe let's come back to it or whatever. And then as soon as we heard the Viridian beat, which shouts Raw Styles for making that beat. That dude's incredibly talented. But yeah, as soon as we heard that beat, like I remember first hearing it, and then that first bar, that summer turned to fall, you let me miss it, it like immediately sprung in my brain. Like I was just like, all right, let's go. Like, you know, it was yeah, and then it was just super, it was like a blur. Like it feels like it was like, it's not even hard to remember parts of it because it was so fast when we did it.
It's so crazy. Yeah,
it's just basically 4 rappers writing in one room, like, you know, 2 of us probably pacing around. We're all just writing in our own ways. And then we're sharing the verses as we're writing. We're like, yo, hold on, check this out. And then, you know, we'd spit an excerpt, and then the other person would hear it, be like, yo, that's crazy. Like, oh, that's wild. And then you get an idea. Yeah, but it was super organic and
it was a real collaborative effort.
Yeah, it's so hard not to be in. Sorry, I was gonna say it's so hard not to be inspired when you've got like 3 other dudes in the room with you and they're all just like barring it out. You know what I mean? Like when you have like when you're sitting there, it's different when you're writing alone. At least for me, when I'm writing alone, like sometimes I'll get distracted or whatever, and it just takes me a while. And then like I'm sitting in there, and then like I'm like, oh, what do you got? And then I'm like, okay, this dude just spit me like the hardest verse I've heard like in months. Okay, and then I'm like, okay, well now I got to bring it, you know. And then
Yeah.
you're sitting there, and it becomes like this like really healthy competition, like of just like it's like playing any sport or something, and you just want to be, you don't want to, you know, you want to push yourself as hard as you can, and like
You know
these
what it's
guys
like?
really push it. Yeah,
It's like going to the gym, and if there's no one at the gym, you kind of slacking off, taking your time with it, not doing as many reps. Bunch of people in the gym, or some of your friends coming with you to the gym, you're gonna be, you know, you're not gonna be slacking as much. You know, especially if everyone else around you is working their asses off. It motivates you. You know, you don't want to be left behind. And hip hop, you know, it's always like there's always like a competitive element to hip hop. And although I don't think we were ever competitive on this project, there is this feeling, at least for me, there was this feeling that I don't want to fall behind. You know, these are really,
that's exactly,
these are all really talented artists, and I don't want to, you know, just spit some bullshit.
Not give my 100. Like I felt like you were forced into a position where you had to just, it's like if you felt it and that's what came. It worked. I've personally never done that ever. I could say with all of the shit that I've ever done in my life, I've never been able to sit with a group of equally talented and it was crazy, man. It was like it's not what you imagine it to be. Like we're just standing in a huddle and freestyling outside of church or school or some shit like that. It's like Bill's on the couch over here. I go outside to smoke. Rav is upstairs, like writing. I come back inside. Rav shares his joint. I go to the room. I start writing. Bill shares his with Rav. I come back out.
Yeah.
Square is just here, just doing the drink the whole time. Like, and then we all come together later on that evening, and then we spit it together. And it's like, all right, I guess we'll record it at some point.
Oh well. Also, yeah. Like a lot of the songs, we'd be whoever basically finishes writing their verse first. They go away into the booth. They go record their verse, and that's it. And once everyone's written and recorded their verses, we moved on to the next beats. But Viridian was very organic, and I don't think there was much thought put into it. As soon as we heard the beat, everything kind of fell into place.
Absolutely. For sure.
How would you classify the exociety sound?
You guys have any?
Nope.
Hold on, I got it. We got one. Can we officially coin this here?
Void rap.
Yeah, void rap. Yeah, that's the thing we decided. Because I think our thing is like a lot of our listeners listen to like lo-fi stuff. A lot of them listen to like more like I guess like traditional hip hop stuff, like, you know, like Doom's, like Mad Libby type stuff too. Like, but it's also kind of like I think there's a lot of our stuff that it does kind of have like a different thing going on than a lot of people, and it's not like it doesn't have like the cutesy thing that a lot of the lo-fi stuff has, and it doesn't have this or that. And like for us, we were sitting here trying to figure out what the term would be for what we make. And I don't think that we're the first people to make this type of music, but I think that we're the first people to maybe give it this name. But we decided, like, I think void rap is a good name because it feels like you're just rapping into the void, like screaming into the void, and there isn't like necessarily a solution to your problems that you're talking about. And I also think that it sounds really cool. So
but that goes back to what we were saying earlier about like not being condescending when talking about mental health. A lot of people are like, so this is a problem we all struggle with. This is how you get around it, right? And I think it's great that people like to share wisdom, but sometimes people deliver it in a very heavy-handed way, very on the nose. And I think by doing that, you're doing a disservice to the message because no one's going to pay attention because that style of delivery is played out. And so I think void rap is basically like venting, right? It's instead of venting into to your therapist or your journal or under your breath on your way to work, we do it in the booth, you know? And it's although it's deeply personal, we've been very fortunate that the human experience is a a lot of human experiences are very common amongst us. And although we feel pain and difficulties in different ways, we, you know, at the end of the day, we still all need the same basic things, you know, shelter, heat, food, some love, and I don't know. That's where I'm at.
I concur.
Yeah. Okay, you guys are going on the Out of the Woods tour. What can fans expect to see when they come and see you live?
Chaos.
It's gonna be so much fun. That's the only word I can say. This is just gonna be so much fun. Like anytime we've done shows together, it's always gone. We've only done a few together, and it's always gone over really well. It's like feels like a real good safe space for our fans to just be who you want to be, like just be unabashedly yourself, you know. And it's cool. People they get a little rowdy in there. Sometimes it'll be fun. It's a good time.
Yeah, the performances are gonna be wild. We're gonna have we don't have any opening acts, you know, so we're all gonna have our individual sets, and we're gonna have the collective exo set. We have backdrops and props and things like that that are tied in with everything that we're doing right now. You know, we recorded this album at a cabin, a documentary. We have a documentary dropping all of our time there making the album. That documentary is dropping the week after the album drops. We have a bunch of music videos in the pipeline. We got I'm definitely missing a lot of stuff. Merch, a lot of merch that's dropping when the album drops. We got our own hot sauce. We got our own hot sauce.
Oh snap!
Yeah, it's fire. It's fire.
That's why.
Yeah, we be cooking. We be chefing.
we have mad merch for that, and then we have a lot of exclusive merch for the tour as well. That's exclusive to the tour, and our fans. You know, if you bought merch from us before, then you know that we go all out. We don't take album art and just slap it on a shirt, then slap it on a sticker, then slap it on a bottle. We work with various visual artists. We love art of various mediums, and so we make sure to reach out, collaborate, commission very talented artists to make our merch, to help collaborate on the merch that we put out. So that's something to look forward to, I'd say.
If this was the last show that anyone ever attended, if we shut down in pandemic or went to war, this is the one to go to.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Period.
This is
Period.
the last
stamp that on everything.
before World War III. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Shout out to my mama. We out here.
Go.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
It was a pleasure talking
for
with
having
you.
us.
No doubt.
Appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace.
My friends don't drink Pepsi Cola, don't want that stuff, that deadly soda. Blunts wrapped tight like store controller, just puff past mics, all poured it sober. Walk into the corner store, bucket full of cigarettes. Grab the cheapest one they got, nothing like living in debt. Counting my quarters.